So how can you choose the best therapist for you and start successful therapy? Because if you don't know how to pick the right therapist, the therapy isn't going to be as successful, and I don't want that for you. So in this video, I'm going to share exactly what you need to do in order to pick a therapist that's the best fit so that your therapy can be successful. But first, my name is Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist, and I love helping people create relationships that work. So the first thing you need to do is consider what kind of therapy you're looking for. For instance, each therapist has their own theoretical orientation that they come from. For instance, some people are going to be more psychodynamic, which means they focus more on the impact of childhood. Another common modality is cognitive behavioral, where you're looking at beliefs, negative thoughts, and behaviors. Somatic therapy is the connection between the body and the mind. Gestalt therapy is a lot more active approach where you're rehearsing your what's called an empty chair technique, where you're putting your family member in the empty chair and you're telling them everything you want to tell them. Another approach is holistic, where you might do some hypnotherapy or guided imagery. Solution focused is another modality where the therapist focuses primarily on your strengths and coming up with solutions. It's a very active approach. And then there's another really important approach called EMDR, and this is very powerful for trauma. And it's not like typical talk therapy. This is where you are doing a series of eye movements or taps on your body as you are in a meditative state. It's very powerful because it bypasses the logical mind. But these are important to know up front, because if the therapist you're calling has an approach that you don't want, that's going to lead to a mismatch, and I don't want that for you. So it does help to ask them what kind of approach they have for therapy. Now, it's also important to note that most therapists have what's called an eclectic approach, which means they draw from various therapies in their approach with clients. I typically work from a 12-step perspective in cognitive behavioral with a little bit of psychodynamic. But there's certain things that I don't do. I'm not trained in EMDR. And if you're wanting trauma work, that would be one I would definitely have you consider. So the next thing I want you to do is I want you to think about what kind of person you want to work with. Do you want a male or a female or non-binary? Do you want someone that has a more direct approach or passive approach? And what I mean by that is sometimes people want a very gentle approach where they don't want to be pushed, whereas other people might want a very direct, active approach filled with suggestions and brainstorming ideas. So it really depends on what you're wanting. It helps to know that before you get on the phone with somebody, because then you can direct your questions to what you're wanting. So next, you're probably going to have what's called a consultation call, which is 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes it's as much as 30, where you're going to be talking to the therapist on the phone and telling them what your presenting problem is, which means what is the issue or issues that are driving you to seek help now. This is not a time to expect them to give advice or to solve a problem for you, okay? Therapy technically hasn't started yet. But it's important for you to know that, because the goal of this phone call is for you to see if it's a good fit, and for the therapist to see if it's a good fit for them. And how you do that is you share a brief summary about what the problems are in your life that you need help with. For instance, people will call me and they'll say, I have anger issues, or I really struggle with codependency. If somebody calls me and they're bipolar, I'm not going to work with them because I don't have any experience in that area. Not every therapist is trained in every problem. There's way too many problems out there for us to know it all. And so it's important to know that and be honest about what your presenting problem is, even if it's uncomfortable, because you want the therapist to say, yes, I can absolutely work with that. I have experience with that. If they hesitate and they're not sure how to answer, that would be a red flag for me, because you want somebody to be very confident in dealing with your presenting problem. Like, for instance, if somebody calls me about anger or codependency, I'm down, I'm good. I can tell them how I work because I'm very comfortable. But again, if somebody calls me about something that I'm not comfortable with, I'm gonna just let them know, I'm not the best fit for that issue, but here are some referrals. So don't be afraid that if they do give you referrals, referrals, it doesn't mean they don't want to work with you. It just means that they know they're not the best fit. And an ethical therapist is more concerned about what you need than what they need, because that's their job. Our job is to make sure you have the best possible fit for therapy. The next thing when you're on the phone is don't be afraid to ask questions. You are the consumer. You get to choose whether or not you feel comfortable enough to book an appointment. So think about what those questions are. But the one I would absolutely ask is, how do you work with your particular problem? When somebody calls me for anger or codependency, I let them know exactly how I work so that they have a sense of what the work is going to be and what my approach looks like. Now, that's not going to necessarily be a long answer, but it's enough for them to get a sense of who I am as a therapist. If they hesitate, if they're not sure, again, that's a red flag, and I want you to pay attention to any possible red flags that you feel on the phone, or they're not very warm, or they're not very patient and they're rushing you through the phone call. Those aren't necessarily great signs, because in the consultation call, they should give you that 15 to 20 minutes so that you have enough time to explain what the problem is and they can tell you a little bit about how they work. Now, the next thing I want to cover is be wary of online reviews, because anybody can leave a review. And there's been many therapists, including myself, that have had people leave a review that we didn't know. And the problem is because we are limited by confidentiality, we cannot confirm or deny that we are working with a client. So we cannot respond to any reviews, whether they're positive or negative. And the problem is that when you work with a mentally ill population, often they don't like therapy and they may retaliate by leaving a bad review. So a bad review may not be indicative of that therapist's skill. It may be more indicative of the patient's diagnosis. But again, this is why online reviews are something to treat with caution, because you don't even know if that person actually saw that therapist. The next thing is I want you to trust your gut, because if you get a bad feeling, if you get a sense that, you know what, this person is not a match for me, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. You don't need an explanation. Get off the phone or ask for referrals. It's totally okay, because your therapist is going to be a very important person in your life, and you need to feel comfortable. You need to feel like you can start to build a relationship with them. And this leads to another point. Your therapist is not going to be your friend. This isn't somebody you can call outside of session when you're upset. Unless it's an emergency, you really want to keep the work to the session. And every therapist has different boundaries around this. Some are more lax around texting a little bit or emailing, but that may be an important question to ask, is what are the boundaries of contact when I'm not in therapy? Because most therapists are going to want you to limit the contact unless it's an emergency. So during the call, the therapist is probably going to ask you if you want to book an appointment. It's totally up to you. If you're not sure whether or not you want to make an appointment right away, don't. It's totally okay to let them know, hey, can I get back to you? I need to go right now. Because this is an important decision. I don't want you to feel pressured to make that decision while you're on the phone with them, especially if you're a people pleaser, because you're going to end up booking an appointment. And I only want you to book an appointment if it feels right. So here's your bonus tip. This is something not everybody asks, but it's really important. But here's the thing. It can come across as a very personal question, so you have to be careful how you ask it. When I'm looking for a therapist, I want to know that they are doing their own work, which means they've been in therapy or they believe in personal growth work on a continuous basis. So I wouldn't necessarily ask them, are you currently in therapy? That's probably a bit too personal. But I would say, do you believe in doing this work yourself? And if they hesitate or give you an academic type answer, that's really important information. Because for me, I want somebody in the trenches. And I'm very open with my clients that I am in the trenches. I believe in this work. I do my own healing every day, practicing the same tools that I teach my clients, because I know what it's like to be on the path. Because you want a therapist that's doing their own work, because then they understand it from a personal aspect, not just a professional one. Because if you're only doing this work professionally, you don't really understand the ins and outs of being in gut-wrenching pain and what it's like to grieve and what it's like to really work through a trauma. And if you have a therapist that has been there, done that, and is continuing to work on themselves, they're likely going to be more empathetic, and they're going to understand the process of therapy is imperfect. It's not about reading something in a book. It's about living it one day at a time. And to me, that's really, really important when choosing a therapist. So the next step is I want you to go watch my video on codependency, because if you are a people pleaser and have trouble setting boundaries, I can help. Thanks so much.